And I will do a screen share where we just call into mind the outline just for a second. All right. I don't know if how many of you were struck by how many problems these people have, because I'm kind of naive. I mean, I did deal with the imbalances in my own parents and families, and I worked that out in my mind in relation to their families. But there was nothing, there was no violence and no infidelity and things. So I've really learned a lot about trying to know that I don't know and admiring so many of my students who have been through a lot, things I can't even imagine. Um, so anyway, so we're going to start with Hermes. He's the messenger of the gods. He was precocious. He's the guy who, sells you stuff. The nice thing that I like about reading this is you can see what it means to be a good parent. And a good parent just figures out what type their child is and just tries to nurture that child, doesn't try to put him through a straitjacket where they all have to be the same. And I know I was that way because I'm Hestia, Hestia would notice these things. And also as a teacher, I am that way. I just assume every student is different. And that's why students who like to get tests that are objective and everybody, the same answer, it's the same for everybody. I would commit suicide if I gave tests like that, because I don't want to sit down and have to correct the same thing and have no idea who the student is. So I get to know my students through the papers they write. That's the way it works for me. And they're all different. But so sometimes, and you can think about this yourself, maybe you have a certain type, you are a certain type, and you happen to get parents that either were really good at dealing with your type or really bad at it, or perhaps your sibling was a certain type and it didn't match very well with your parents' type, or whatever happens. There's also sibling rivalry issues. And so that's always a big thing. And kids can get very affected by that, either positively or negatively, how they're treated by and how they treat their siblings. Um, okay, and then it's probably pretty fresh in your mind what you started doing when you started having choices in life. And then the work life, that now all of this stuff comes later than your own experiences. So this would be somebody right? Somebody, an aunt, an uncle, your parents, your grandparents, somebody whose life story is longer. Um, let's see, children. Another issue is that a person of a certain type, sometimes their children can turn out really differently based on whether that parent can, correct for their own inclinations and guide the child. So each parent has to overcome their own imbalances, and then they have to identify the weaknesses and the strengths of their kids and sort of, cultivate the strengths, but also make sure the weaknesses are coming into balance. For example, my oldest daughter was Athena, and she was very, very extroverted, but I always made sure that she had time to herself, right, to balance that out. Or she would just have too many irons in the fire, right? Too many things to do. Let's see. So all of us, every single type has their difficulties for themselves, and then they have their difficulties for others. I don't know if you've ever met a middle-aged person, somebody who just doesn't want to grow up. So this was another thing I thought, the students in the developing countries, I don't know if it surprised them how many stories of roaming all around and infidelity and this and that, because I'm not quite sure they know people who have those options. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the stories that you tell, because they could be, really different than the way men, the kinds of choices men in my society have. Now, when we're going through the women, it was different because I could identify, and because um, I could see the inner lives of these women. But with the men, I'm honestly curious just to see what you say. And then there's the difficulties they create for other people. So that's where we're at with Hermes. Claire, did you think of somebody who's a Hermes?
I did, and I'm still working on kind of putting all the pieces together for it. But my example was someone that I went to school with. He was a few years older than me. He actually dates one of my childhood best friends. Currently, they've been together a few years now. So why I connected it is the communication. He has a way with words. He's highly intelligent, and he has a way with words that either he can be deceitful with, like a bit mischievous, or really charming to that side. And he uses it, I think, from my interpretation, for bad more than good. whether people realize it or not. But he, like I said, he was very intelligent. He could have done anything. He went to college and dropped out. He just allowed himself to get distracted. And I honestly think, like your outline said, the learns easily but won't sit still. That was in adolescence, but I honestly think it carries forward for him. He just cannot sit still, figuratively and literally, in life. And that definitely rattles all of that. So he has dropped out of college twice that I know of. So he's not in school anymore, and he doesn't really have the ambition to find a career path per se. I think he's working in fast food at the moment. Not that there's anything wrong with that, just,
Well, I don't know. It's if it's
he's not looking for a career. He's just busying himself for now, just to allow himself to stay, I think, in the college phase with his friends that are still in school. But he has no intentions of actually going back to school, so it's hard to interpret what his goal is at this point. But I found him really fitting for this on the immature side. I think he has the potential to mature and be those good qualities of this god. I hope he does.
he'll need a mentor, right? An
Yeah.
Apollonian. He'll need somebody to sort of settle him down, get him focused, right?
Yes, and he went into the military, and that helped him actually having the structure and it being forced for him to, as I said, figuratively sit still and do as he was told and get a little bit more focus in his life. But yeah, I don't know. I hope for one of my friends' sakes that, and his sake too, that he kind of, as you said, matures and gets it together.
Do you think, did his parents and other adults let him get away with just being charming?
Yes. His parent I
Ah,
definitely would say that. Now I say some people challenged him, absolutely, but for the most part he got away with it.
did he do it just because he was charming, or did he just, people didn't
I
care?
think he does most things for attention
Okay.
and
And
uses his communication skills to gain that attention.
and it works. That's the key.
Yeah, it works most of the time. I kind of see through it personally, and I get annoyed with it. That's just my personality type, but it works with most people, yes, and in most situations.
Well, have you ever confronted him about it?
I haven't talked to him much recently. I think because he knows that I don't give him the attention that he's worth. You know what I mean? Like, and even my friend that is with him, I don't get to talk to her as much because I don't play into that. So that's been a consequence of that. But yeah, I have said some things to him when we used to be closer. We used to be pretty good friends, and he couldn't take the criticism much.
Yes, okay. I
Yeah, so I thought he was a pretty good fit.
Isn't it kind of weird when you're in an archetype, somebody else's world, and you just cannot figure out? It's like a bunch of mirrors, it's just strange to you. You know that you've gotten sucked into something and you don't know what it is. Do you,
Yes, for sure.
yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, you can imagine me with my person. I'm not charmed by people, right? I just stare them in the eyeballs and that's it. They go do something else. Okay, so May, what have you got?
Professor, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Um, I think of one guy, like he is the roommate of one of my closest friends. Um, he he is actually a very good communicator. He can make friends very quickly, and he can be friends with like people of any backgrounds or any like characteristics. Basically, he is a real like communicator. But I think he is similar to Hermes more in terms of his relationship with women. Like he doesn't want to commit to any relationships. He can like appear and disappear whenever he wants. um actually actually he has one girlfriend, like they have been dating for like many years from high school, but like I don't know like what he did to her, but I think he's kind of manipulating her psychology because he has betrayed her for a lot of times. And but somehow she still like continued like being with him and like take care of him and kind of like that. Even until now he still like goes with another girls if he wants, but like that girlfriend never leaves him, kind of like that. And I don't know like how he could do that, and I really feel like bad for the girlfriend. And as far as I know, like she was raised in a very traditional family where her parents told her that even when her man is like not loyal or something, like she still goes with him and support him like unconditionally. I heard that. And yeah, that's why I feel a bit angry, but I couldn't do anything. But I think that's why I really want to empower women in like now and even in the future, because many women in my country like are taught to be loyal like unconditionally, even when they receive like bad behavior and like bad attitude from men, kind of like that. So here's my example.
Yeah, actually, I mean, when you start looking at it that way, you can think, gosh, your girlfriend has all her own sense of calling, right? She has all her own sacred stuff, but she doesn't even think about it
Yeah,
because she's
true.
just in this role. Whereas, yeah, well, guys can sometimes get into that if they just think they're supposed to be successful, but if they just decide they're going to be themselves, they never feel bad. They don't tend to feel as bad about it, right? And then the woman is supposed to put herself in the straitjacket and give up all these other things. Is that is that what you're thinking, May?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it is important to empower women, make them aware that they have all sorts of sacred goals that they could achieve, and they should, for everybody's sake. they shouldn't have to pander to a man who's not developing himself, right? I like to think of it from a sacred point of view. You know, even if you believe in God, you shouldn't think God wants women and men to act this way, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is the kind of humanism that isn't anti-religion at all, but it doesn't have to be religious. It's very, open in a because religions tend to be absolute, right? And this is really consistent with even conservative religious people often don't want people to live like this, crippled like this. So anyway, all right, Poppy, what have you got? Did you get something, Poppy?
Professor, I will say later. Few minutes
Okay.
later.
Okay, so I will put later down here. Okay. Elizabeth.
So I also have an example of somebody I went to school. He was very like charming and outgoing, and everybody seemed to like him. I did not. I absolutely hated him because I thought he was a jerk.
We have a
But he had this way of like
I was just
he had this way of
a
like
bunch of
making
wise
everybody
women.
think.
Go ahead.
He has this way of like making everybody think he's like the coolest person ever, like the best. But I couldn't stand him, and he was like he always like brought different girls to parties and stuff. Like it was always a different girl, so he was always in a relationship, but it was never for very long. So he was kind of a player, and he was just not cool. And he never sat still in class, like literally or figuratively. He was the class clown, so he was always making jokes and like teasing mostly the girls. And the teacher never really got onto it because he was so charming in it. So I don't know. I'm looking at the page. I never really knew if he was super focused on school. Like he always went to school and did relatively well, but I don't really know if that was his whole path. His dad was a cop, so he was a good dad. He was always there, and he was like one of the only people who could get his kid to calm down. Same with his mom. They were pretty good parents, but the kid was just his parents didn't know how much of a jerk was because everybody thought he was amazing. So I think that he's definitely a Hermes person.
They're in love with their love of their kid, right?
Yeah,
Remember that?
I think so, because he was an only kid. Like he had an older half brother, but he was the only one who lived out.
Remember that? Falling in love with love. It makes you blind. Okay, Sam, what you got?
So whenever I read for Hermes, the first person that popped in my head is my uncle Sergio. And I love him, don't get me wrong. But
We all love them, right?
yeah. So he's a very charming man in the sense of, within the first few words of him, you want to get to know him better and things like that. But he can be a little manipulative. And when it comes to raising his daughter, he actually leaves that to my aunt and only works with Rosalind, which is their daughter, when it comes to punishing her for she does something wrong. But the majority of it goes to my Aunt Dawn. And he doesn't outright say, like, I expect her to take care of the kid or I expect her to do the housework. But I've stayed with them for like a month one time, and I've gone on vacations with them and stuff, and definitely leaves that to her a lot of the times. She'll cook dinner and then she'll clean, and she does laundry and things like that. And he definitely thinks that's kind of her position. And I will say he is very focused on his work, but he refuses to talk about it to anybody. And yeah, that's kind of it. One second, I saw something else and I gotta find it now. He does have a lot of guy friends and not a lot of girlfriends, but he does have a lot of guy friends. But all of his friends are because they either went to college together or they work together. Like, he doesn't have friends outside of those two things. And he's kind of had the same friends for years. Like, he hasn't branched out and made new friends or anything. So yeah, and I would definitely say that he allows Rosalind to make excuses for things that she does, in order to avoid having to punish her. So a lot of the things he'll be okay with her saying or doing, when in reality any person would be like, I don't think I'm going to let my child say that or do that. If they do, they get punished. So, but yeah, when I read that, I just immediately thought of my Uncle Sergio, who I love but has problems. So
What kind of work does he have? Maybe he found a good match.
he is a lawyer.
Oh. That
He
would,
is the like the main defense attorney for Albuquerque, New Mexico.
wow.
So he's a high lawyer.
Wow. Okay, well, he's plenty smart, which it says Hermes is smart. So that's interesting.
Yeah, he's very intelligent, but in a know-it-all kind of intelligence. And for someone who is so, I would say, progressive in his views on women and abortion and things like that, like, he's very much a liberal through and through. Until it comes to his own wife, then he expects her to do the housework and the cooking and the cleaning and things like that.
Yeah,
So
that's the way it works. It's in theory, right? In theory. Yeah, that's hard, you know. Okay, DT, do you have something? DT, are you there? Okay, Madeline?
So the person that I chose was like kind of a friend of mine. We're not really friends anymore, but he's very smart. He's very, very charming. He's kind of like a traveler. He's always on the go. Like, every single time we used to catch up, like, he's somewhere new. He doesn't have a problem with women because of the fact he's very charming, and he doesn't really like to commit to relationships. Like, I've seen him with several women. He is kind of a businessman. He did try to own his own business, but because of the way that he lives, because he's always on the go, the business kind of failed. But that's who I chose.
Yep, that works. Okay, Margia. Are you there? Margia? Okay, you turned on your microphone. Okay. All right, so it looks like you're having internet issues, but I'll come back to you. Is it working now? No, okay. Untari? Do you have something, Untari?
Yes, Professor. I use my friend as an example. His name is Yoga, and Yoga is one of my friends who helped me with the most when we held an event in our senior high school, like sponsorship, negotiation with the headmaster, or anything related to the external relation. He was the one who will take care of it because he is good at communicating. And he was the type to find it difficult to sit still in class, countless how many scolding he received from the teacher. He is also an ignorant person and often trick others, even the teacher itself. Uh, he is also a kind of player, and also think that, and people also think that he is attractive, which I don't think so. And he think that he is cool because of that, when the truth is no. Even so, he was still loved by many people. What can I say? He is a social butterfly. Join here and there, and everyone in school knows him. He likes to talk to new people who are literally strangers. And even after graduating, he has many connections which make it easy for him to get a job. That's why I relate him with Hermes.
Okay. Um, it is interesting to anticipate, like, what is going to happen to this person over a lifetime, right?
Yes.
It'll be interesting to watch. Can he keep a job, or can he keep moving up and have a good career? Or is he just going to keep, zigzagging?
Yeah, I think he is going to be zigzag because like when he got a job and he feel like he don't want to like work in that place, he will just drop out. And then he got a new job again. It's so easy for him.
Boy, that is not the life I would want, but it is interesting. So Marcia had something here. She said she knows a guy who's extroverted. He's talkative. He can make people laugh. Everybody likes to depend on him when they need help for their personal issues because he can solve it with excellent knowledge. Okay. All right.
It's
Good.
me, Diti.
Oh, okay. DT? Right. So Newsrot is not stable. DT, is yours stable? Oh, it was DT I was reading. Sorry. Newsrot, her internet isn't stable. That's fine. We'll just keep going. And you can write about it. Asbina? Do you have something? Oh,
Professor, now I want to share my story.
okay, Poppy, go ahead.
Yeah, I have I have one uncle, and also he is same age with me, and we are very friendly. And then he always fall in love with the girls, and when he uh, proposed the girl, and those girl after years they got married another boys, and he always share her story with me. And that time I told her why you should laugh in the girls. So he told me that I like to stay with the girls, so that's why I proposed the girl. But he always fall in love. He still, yeah,
So you sort of wonder what's going to happen to him in the long run, don't you?
yeah,
Is he, so he charms the girls?
yeah.
Okay, he's a charmer, huh? Okay. Um, let's see, where are we? We're on Al. Okay, Al.
I had a buddy of mine who introduced me to this guy that every now and then we go to a barbecue or a bar, he'd be there, And every time I met the guy, he had a different job. He was doing something completely different. He was like he worked at Circuit City for a while, and then he was a DJ for a little bit, and then he was doing security. And every time I saw him, it was just a different job. And he was like a relatively like personable guy, kind of on the fringe of like whatever group setting we were in. Everyone kind of knew him, everyone liked him. No one really had a problem against him, but no one really knew him. And then one day to the next, I asked about him, and he had dropped off the face of the earth for a couple months and popped up again in Australia. And he had just picked up and moved to Australia because he was just bored of being in America, I guess.
Well, that sounds like the right one. Bingo, I think you got it. Lakin, what have you got?
I'm gonna pass.
Okay. Rupiah. School friend who's an extrovert. He can make friends easily. If we need any emergencies, he's there to help us. We could contact all our friends through him. So we used to call him Network. Okay, we still use that nickname to identify him. So that sounds good. How does he treat women, Rupiah? Is he a charmer? Anyway, that sounds like the right type there. Where are we now? Who comes after Rupiah? Let's see. Louis.
Yes, Professor. I have an example about my uncle. He's very friendly. He's easily get along well with all kind of people, um, of all age and type. Like and women around him will attract us by the way he communicating with other people. Before he getting married with my aunt, he used to be arrested for several months because he like for shoplifting. um Now like he doesn't have a stable career, and he like no commitment with their family, although they have 3 kids together. He doesn't care much about his kids study, what's going on with them. When he returned home in the late afternoon, he usually like get drunk, shouting at my aunt and breaking things in the house. Recently, while getting drunk, he's even chased his wife with a knife. And luckily, my aunt, she was able to escape. When I asked my mom why my aunt, she doesn't get divorced with him, uh, like my mom answered us because like in Vietnam society, in traditional family like us, when the woman get divorced, she will bring their bad reputation for the old families. So I guess that's why like my aunt just suffer in silence, and uh she doesn't want to get divorced with him. Yeah, that's that. This is my example.
Yeah, again, I think it's nice to read about their whole life story because, where is that headed? That, I guess that's what I always think. That's why I'm divorced. I just felt like, well, where is this going? It's not going anywhere. It's just going to be enabling. Nobody's going to grow. Everybody's going to get stuck in this rut. So, well, we'll have to stay tuned, Louis. You'll have to find out, if eventually things change. Somebody put in the chat. Okay. Asbina. Oh, okay. Is it okay if I read this, Asbina? Because you sent it to me privately. Well, okay. Is that okay? Okay. Her brother, her uncle's son, he's really good looking, a good friend, a good brother. He loves to travel, play sports. He's a football player. He's a well-known football player. He's really creative. He doesn't study much. His relationships to women made me realize he's like Hermes. The girls drool over him because he's handsome, but he's a womanizer. He's been dating many girls at the same time. He goes for a date one day and the next day disappears. Girls have complained to me saying that my brother is such a womanizer. I've talked about this with him, but still he doesn't change. So there's nothing I can do about it. Once he made a girl pregnant, she came to us, told that it's my brother, but my brother refused to take responsibility. So everybody agreed on something to sort it all out. Okay. Yep, I think you got it. I think that's it. And then Margia, I have one of my teachers is a really good communicator. He's not as extroverted, but he communicates. He has a skill to set up the human mind. He's intelligent. He's an architect. He also tries to fix up problems if anybody has problems. And Margia just says she has a bad internet, but that's okay. Thanks for typing it up. It all works and we're getting it on the recording. So where are we? Ruck 9. Are you there? Oh, I guess not. Okay, Newsrot, do you have, did you say you had a bad connection? Newsrot, are you there? Okay, Rosie, Rosie, go for it.
So I have an example. It's a close friend of mine, and we have been studying together since kindergarten. And I think he fits into Hermes' archetype because, as Bolan says, that Hermes likes to explore everything, touches and takes apart anything he can get his hands on. That is perfectly the best description of like what Yongqing is like, because whenever we play like toy trucks or any toys, he will have like this fake mini screw that he will go into the toys and take them apart, or he will like later on he will go and fix his own computer. Like he wouldn't go and take it to like the computer guy, but he would just have a screw and like de-screw his own computer components and take them out. And I always tell him that he loses his mind, but he said just watch him fix it. And also like there's another example that I think he is a good example of Hermes is back in high school, we always have this big textbook that is like 2-3 pounds each. And so all our homework is connected to the textbook. So each of us ended up carrying like 3-4 textbooks home. But he found his way to get like the free PDF version from some off-limit sites and share it with us. And we are thankful for him to like save us from carrying those heavy books home. And one more thing, in terms of his relationship to women, he sure is a bad boy. Okay, he has like countless girlfriends. Like I don't know, it's just the way he speaks that attract girls to like him, and then like he'll date this girl for a week or so, and then the next time he'll be with another girl. And I was like, how can he even date so many girls? But like, yeah, that's him. Even until now, he's still like that.
Well, who knows what the future will bring. Fahima. Do you have a connection or do you have to just write it down? I think Fahima has trouble with connections too. Okay, Bondona, do you have something? All right. So I think that I will then check out the outline here. I'll put this on for a minute for Aries, who's very different, right?
Ma'am,
Oh,
excuse me.
okay. Go ahead.
Ma'am, I was disconnected. So
That's
like,
fine. Go ahead.
hello.
Go ahead. Just say your example.
Hello.
Yes. Say your example.
Ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Like, I don't have like personal example, but like I got a movie, like it is an Hollywood Bollywood movie named Ladies versus Vicky Val. So here, like the actor Ranveer Singh, like act as an like he like flirt with like girls. He cheats the girls, and like he takes money and he runs away at the end. Like it happens like he proposed three girls for marriage, and like he borrowed monies from, means like not money, actually dowry from his parents, and like he told the girls that I need some kind of money to start a business. Before, without starting a business, I cannot marry you. So the girls were truly in love with him, and so like they decided to give him money. And like when the boy got the money, he runs away. He did like many a times with many girls. So at the last, he was like the three girls. They decided to like, means to treat him, and like at the end he was like defeated by a girl named Anushka Sharma.
Okay, good. So I don't, it's interesting because until I read these books, if I had seen a movie like that, I would not know that that's an archetype. I would just think it was one of those Bollywood stories, But I think the movie industry does a lot of archetypal stuff because they want to educate people, right? They want people to be able to sort of, if they get in, if they are in the company of somebody like someone in the movie, they can think about and think about, well, what were the person's weaknesses, and be, live a little bit more thoughtfully. So I know that the whole point of having poets and artists find these patterns was to educate people so they don't have to make all these mistakes. So I think that's interesting, and I didn't know enough. In life, it's hard to get to know very many people very well. I think because a lot of you have extended family or you live in a small town, you actually know a lot of people for a lot longer. So you can understand the characters of people better than I ever could growing up. But I think it's good. It's good for me to learn all that stuff. All right, so let's do Aries. Let's see, here we are. And Aries is very, very different, right? The god of war. And he is condemned in the Olympic stories. In the Iliad, he has a double-edged sword. And during the war, he just goes right in the middle and kills people on both sides because he wants to be tough, right? He wants to show everybody that he's tough. But Zeus, god of justice, Athena, and Hera, goddess of honor, they all condemn him because the message is you cannot let that kind of raw brutality, you've got to contain it in your society because it will destroy a society. But the thing that's interesting about the way that Bolin does it, again, if you have a kid that's like this, really, it's very important to be a good parent and to channel that energy. Like a good mother hugs him a lot, right? Because he's physical and just gets that energy from into something positive. So it is really important that parents don't judge their kids, that they just figure out what they got and then figure out how to channel that into something positive and creative rather than destructive. All right. So he gets into trouble. He needs the worst parents are the ones that are authoritarian and just confront him. Just treat him like just being himself is wicked or out of control, rather than just help him start out where he is and then find a way to channel it. Yeah, a compliant mother, like a Persephone mother, would be a disaster. If the father is Zeus, that's really a problem because he'll always feel like a failure, or else he'll always feel like he's just not able to be himself. If his mother is Hera and just wants to spend time with her husband, again, she's disengaged. That's bad news. Okay, so he's the guy who joins the kinds of sports that are competitive, aggressive. I'll be curious to know which sports in your countries. For us, right away, it's football and hockey, no question. But I don't know what it is like in Cambodia or India or Afghanistan. So I'm curious. If he's too impulsive, he'll quit stuff, and that's bad because there's not a lot of doors open to him. He might go into the military, and because my country is a war state, we have, a big chunk of people in the military or in the police force. And a lot of times, right, we have big troubles with violence, both among the gang members, these Ares types that confront each other, because a police officer is a former military or a former, they have the same personality type too often. Police and military will attract people with this personality and they will go off. Those are not the kind of situations that someone with this personality should be in, because they are exactly the person who's likely to overreact. So that's just a huge mismatch between what a society would want in those positions and what they actually get. All right, relationships with women. If it's an Aphrodite type woman who also is sensuous and wants a lot of different partners, that's fine. But anybody else who wants a commitment, forget it. And then with the Aphrodite, they're attracted, they fight, they break up, but sometimes they like each other better than other couples that just grow, to really not like each other at all. Most of his friends are with men. He likes to do sports, competitive things. He likes to talk about women in sports. Oh my God, these are the people at the bars, right? Talking about women in sports. Their bonds with men that they went through, they have stories to tell about being in the military. There's a Veterans of Foreign Wars group. They go and drink and tell stories. Doesn't like to be shunned or scapegoated. that would be being humiliated by your peers is really awful. So this guy is touchy. He would either defend his kids, you know, against any threats, or else he would turn around and be an abuser. So it's touchy. You have to be careful. Marriage, he's not a long-term guy, but he can be. Again, if he gets the right parents and he's living, this would be a working class neighborhood where everybody's kind of family, community, sports, just very, very generic. I don't know, in the US, it'd be old time. Let's see, children, he can have premarital pregnancies. If his childhood is okay, he can play sports. If his children are more intellectual and upwardly mobile, that can get to be a problem. In his middle years, if he feels like a failure, his parents wanted him to aspire to upper middle class, then it's going to be a problem. Okay, later on, you know, so people become more and more themselves. And if it works out when they're younger, it works out when they're older. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And this is kind of sad to look at the life trajectories of people. He needs to balance it out. We talked a lot about balancing when we talked about when you wrote your papers, right? You tend to be one thing, but you really need to balance it. Well, that's true of men too. That's what therapists, you know, try to help them figure this out. Repressed emotions are no good. That's what therapy tries to help people bring out those feelings that they didn't let themselves feel when they were growing up. If they're wounded growing up, when they're a father and they're powerful, they feel like now I can do this, even when, you know, if they think about it, that's the last thing they would want. Being a scapegoat. So this would be a really important reason for you to regret if you'd ever scapegoated somebody in school. And then hopefully when you have kids, make sure to have your kids, you know, I think that my kids knew that you shouldn't scapegoat people because it just hurts everybody. Sibling rivalries would be terrible. Alcohol, you know, it could, if in moderation, it could be okay, but easily abused, he can end up being a disappointment and then just head downhill. Let's see. Hermes to the rescue, right? He needs somebody who teaches him, instead of fighting back, talk, right? Be the communicator. And then with Apollo, get organized, have some kind of plan about a career. And even, you know, just make sure you stick with this job for this many years. Don't get mad at the boss. Plan ahead, think about your future, become more reflective. And that's that inner voice, Athena's influence. So that is why I like reading Greek poetic texts, because they are about those inner voices. And I've always had, you know, I talk to myself and I have these voices. So because I'm reflective. So it is, the literature just has a lot of that in it. It'd be really good for him if he could have a rational and loving mother. And if he doesn't, it's real trouble. The notion of active imagination. So this is what I asked some of you to do on your papers, right? I had a student, she's overcome a lot of difficulties, and she felt like her types were Hestia and Persephone, and can't remember the other one, but I told her, okay, now you get to college. It's possible, this is something I thought, because so many of you are Hestia that I think that is really weird. It's a way higher percentage than the population. So what I want y'all to think about is, to what extent do you think of yourself as reflective, just because those were all the options you had so far in your life, right? And so when you come to AUW, it's good to try a lot of stuff, try being more assertive and running something and all these things that were not options for you, because you might find out that you're actually more extroverted than you thought. I'm not sure, because I mean, I'm Hestia, but I would imagine that because women are so forced into these, boxes of assumptions about who they are. I know some of my students got out of it and had a lot of opportunities, but other ones should, AUW is a place where you just take chances and branch out and see if some of those other passions fit for you. And then also, just having tried is a good thing, because then you can find out and you can also sort of tap into that if you need it. Okay, and then you have to recover the pains of childhood and then find some positive way, right? Starting an NGO, or just falling in love with becoming a therapist or something that you really care about, and then you use it to help other people pull themselves up, pull themselves out of a problem. And that's the way you can do something creative with your own obstacles in the past. Okay, so, I mean, I can picture an Aries who's just a natural protector of his children. The children feel secure, they know if anybody hurts me, I'd go tell my dad and he'll just go beat them up, or he'll go and, yell at their parents. So they feel protected if he's really if he can be positive. And then he can also be a community leader who really battles for the safety and rights of other people, right? So when he's good, he can be really good. But it tends to go south because our societies, especially now our high-tech society, really tends to reward computer geeks and corporate white collar tie and shirt type folks. But okay, so now we're going to start with Aries. Claire, do you have something?
Yes, I do. So I did another personal example of someone close to me. This one was a bit closer than the last. It was my best friend's dad. He is one of the best men just overall that I've ever known, but a lot of these qualities did match. He, let's see, he was very assertive and active, like it said, and emotional in his reactions. I wouldn't necessarily call him just an overly emotional man, but in his reactions, you saw the heightened emotions, most definitely. And his actions were not thought out. They were knee-jerk reactions to, like I said, the emotions he was feeling. His work, it was crazy how it all matched up, because he worked on their family farm and their family business and all that, but then in later years he worked in the oil fields. So that's exactly, which is kind of crazy. And then when it talked about the workplace like activities, I wouldn't say that he would misbehave, because he took the situation seriously, especially because where he was working, either he or other people could be in danger if he was to
Right.
misbehave. And he took that seriously. So I wouldn't match that up necessarily. That's a difference. But now on their farm or something where he worked with his sons, he would goof off here and there if he had the chance. So I guess, you know, in different situations it matched up. And then office jobs definitely would have never worked. Way too active for that. I thought that the relationship with women fit well because him and his wife, they got married when they were straight out of high school, but they were very like I'm saying, heightened emotions, big fights. They'd come together in the end, of course, but just like over the top fights that you tell a story about and laugh after, things like that. The being
Was she an
competitive.
Aphrodite? Was she Aphrodite type?
In some ways, I'd say definitely partly. I've got to look a little bit further and review that because I was actually doing that a while ago to make sure to like get kind of her archetype and what she was, but definitely in part. So that matched up. He was extremely competitive, enjoyed spending time with men, like it said, because of the activities that they did that kind of sparked that attitude. And then the last thing that I thought was just spot on was that he wouldn't, if you had asked him if he worried about what people thought about him, he would have said no. But the worst pain factor that you brought up, you put it just as a little bullet on your overview, your outline, was being shunned by peers. And like, if it was about, it could be a comment he made or just like someone not liking his personality at all, and we could all tell it, or like he could tell it, he would ask your input. Like it bothered him. He kept thinking on it. So like he did care deeply about being shunned per se. So I thought that that was a deep connection. So yeah, I thought he was pretty spot on, honestly. It kind of, the longer I went on it, the more added up completely.
That is interesting. Okay, good. All right, May, did you find something?
Yeah, I think of my best guy friend, like he is not fully Aries, but I can see the image of Aries in him when during his childhood, like he was when he was in, I remember in sixth grade or kind of like that, like his parents divorced and he really liked emotional support from parents, and also before divorce, his father often got drunk and used violence with his mother and also with himself. So he was not having a very happy family until um, his parents got divorced and he lived with his mother. But his mother also has some of the expectation, like which he doesn't really want to have. For example, like he didn't really fit into Vietnamese educational system. He often got rejected in school because in school in Vietnam, like often we are expected to memorize the knowledge to pass the examination. We are not encouraged to learn, like to apply or to understand from the root of everything. So he was very different, and many people consider him as like an abnormal person. And his mother, even when she loved him, but she doesn't really understand his struggle. So he always like emotional support. That's why he often like overreacts. And even like when at school, if he has some conflicts with friends, he will use like violence to do that. And yeah, it was not really good, but he didn't know how to really like control his actions. Only when like he entered high school, like he had many like good friends, and also he applied to study abroad, and he got acceptance to one boarding US school. I remember his school, it was very unique, like that he is allowed to travel to different continents every semester, and he could like learn different cultures and also make new friends every journey he had. So he became totally different thanks to a different like education, and also he could control his feeling, and also he didn't use violence anymore, but he used knowledge and also his communication skill to solve every conflict. And yes, I think he's one of my best friend also because um he is like highly educated, he respect women, and also he know like how I struggle with like patriarchal society. Yeah, so it's my example.
Yeah, well, it sounds like when he went to high school, that tapped into the Hermes, right? The traveler,
Yes, yes, yes.
to the Apollo, the studier, the guy with the plan. So it sounds like he did tap into those two archetypes that would balance him out. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Okay, Poppy, what have you got?
Professor, I want to pass.
Okay. DT, do you have something?
Oh, Professor, not yet.
Okay. Madeline.
So the person that I chose was my uncle. He's very like as a child, he's very emotional. He's very outspoken, wasn't afraid to speak his mind. He's very competitive. He like grew with a younger brother, my dad. So of course he like obviously, two guys. Of course there could be like a lot of competition. He played almost every sport that I can possibly come up with. But wrestling was his main one. He like tried to go to college with wrestling, but ended up like not wanting to go to college. He is very hands-on kind of guy. He's an electrician. He goes like that's just kind of like something he's able to do. He's very so yes, he's kind of aggressive, but he kind of uses it for a good matter. He's very protective, especially over my little cousins. So that's who I chose.
Okay. Okay, good. Margia. Does your internet work, or do you can type something up and I'll read it. That'll be fine. Untari.
I would like to pass, Professor.
Okay. Asbina. Okay, Asbina, are you there now? Oh. Yeah, okay. Yep. Okay, Elizabeth has to leave early. So let's get her in here. Did you already leave? I did forget.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, why don't you say something now? I did have that before class started, but okay, go ahead.
So for Aries, I brought the example of my brother. He is a very, very emotional person. He gets very angry very easily. He does not think before he reacts a lot of times, which is why he ends up snapping at people. And then later he comes and apologizes and he's like, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking before I said something. One of the points on here was that he bounced around between sports, and he has played, I think, every single sport that you can play, or not like every single sport, but when he was younger, he played soccer, he played baseball, he's been on the football team, he's played basketball, he's done everything you can think. He even did dance for a while. He's done everything you can think of, but he never stuck with it for very long. He just bounced around to different ones. So that's why I really, really thought he fit into that. Most of his friends are guys. He doesn't really have a whole lot of friends that are girls, because if he ends up having friends that are girls, he will date them. And his thing is he falls really fast, and a lot of times he ends up getting hurt. So he's very emotional. So he puts his emotions into the relationship, and then when it turns out bad, he is really messed up for a while. But he's very polite. He just has a lot of emotions, and he's just, my mom always had to make sure that he had something to do or otherwise he would just like be loud and crazy and wild. So
Yeah, okay. Do you remember that? So he's gonna need, right, Hermes to communicate, right, to talk instead of react?
yeah.
Is that, were you thinking of that when he said I wasn't thinking before I said something? Right, that's the,
Lots of times if he snaps at me, my dad, I don't think my dad is a Hermes, but my dad is always like, hey, you should probably apologize because that was a little bit rude. And my brother's like, oh crap, sorry.
yeah, okay. So yeah, he needs a little Apollo and little Hermes there.
Yep.
Okay, now where were we? Untari, did you pass Untari? Espina, let's see. Okay, yeah, you passed. Espina, I didn't hear from. Okay, Al, what you got?
So my example, and I think you might remember him, is what I would say is like a good case of Aries, like plays out well. Is Coach Erickson, who used to coach at Lion, because he's a very passionate man. He was big in wrestling. He was an Olympic alternate for a few years, so very successful in that stance. But now he's getting towards his later years, and he's coaching. And he moved on to Duke, and he's got this nice house like out in North Carolina where he's coaching Division I wrestling now.
Wow, is he kind of heavy set?
Yeah, real big guy,
Okay.
real
Well,
big guy.
actually, I hardly ever get to know coaches, but when I was in Indonesia, I got this breathing problem. And so I had to exercise in the gym on the machine. I couldn't run. And so he used to be in there with the wrestlers. He was a talker, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But he was like one of very, very few coaches that I remember. And yeah, I could see that the students liked him. You know, they crowded around him. Hey guys, blah, 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 blah. So that's kind of good to know, you know, that here he is from the other side, the side of the student.
Yeah, real good guy. Real good guy. He still calls and checks up on us, even though he's coaching at a different program.
That's nice. And Duke is a great, wow.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, very good. Lakin, what you got? Do you have anything? Okay. Rupiah. Do you have something? See if there's something on the chat here. Okay, Lakin's passing. Okay, Rupiah, are you there? Okay, so, okay. It is good to just put a chat there because otherwise either you've lost your connection or, you know, something else. So it's good to stay in touch. Just so I know you're listening. I think that's important. Okay, Louis, what have you got?
Yeah, I'm the one to pass because I didn't find an example.
Okay. Rook 9. Are you there? Nope. Okay. Sam.
I'm here. So like Liz, for Aries, I decided my brother, who is also named David, is a very Aries person. David has a really hard time controlling his emotions. He reacts to his emotions before even slightly thinking about it. And he always feels bad once he does, but he is very, very temperamental and very emotional too. And my parents try, you know, with him, but neither of them were ever that emotional, so they don't really understand anything about that. And then David has played a lot of sports. He is constantly in baseball, football, um, basketball. Recently, he's taking up track, so he's constantly playing sports. A very athletic kid. Um, and then he has good friends, like good guy friends and stuff. And his friends that he has with girls, the thing about it is also David is 14, so he's at that age where he thinks girls are weird and stuff. I think that whenever he gets older, he'll either have one really good female friend that he's close to, or he'll only have guy friends outside of like having an actual romantic relationship with a girl. And then another thing here, it talks about his work, like for David, since he is so young, he obviously doesn't have a job, but thinking about what he would do. If David didn't have his heart condition, then I would say he would go into the military. Like that's the type of attitude, I guess, that he gives off. But he had heart surgery when he was 3 months old, so he can't go into the military. So I think he's going to become someone in the trades field. He'll electrician, plumber, welder, something like that, something along those lines. And another thing is that here it talks about the worst pain is being shunned or scapegoated by peers. David is very he reacts harsh and gets very upset if he is shunned or he loses a competition or something. He's very competitive in that sense too. Even like with me and my sister, like he wants to compete against us. So that's why I think he is very much an Aries kid. I knew I wanted to use David as an example for Aries when the thing said assertive, active, intensely emotional, and embodied person who does not think before he reacts, because that is my brother. And I love him, but that is him. So
Okay, very good. Rossi, what have you got?
Hi, Professor. So I have an example of Aries, and that is my uncle who I always talked about, like the violent one. And I feel like the way he was raised was also a reason that leads him to be that type of Aries man, because my grandfather is also drunk and assertive, and so whenever he drinks, like his kid needs to be really fast in responding to his demands. Like let's say if he asks for water, and if like one of his kid didn't showed up with water right away, like he would beat him up. And because of that kind of toxic environment, that's how my uncle also like have those kind of like demands and feelings. And so whenever he's drunk, he turns into this emotional, violent, crazy type of person where all of us have to bear. And also um he's someone who likes to learn by firsthand experience. And my mother said that when he learns to drive the first time, he ride the motorcycle right into the coconut tree so many times till he's able to keep his balance and like learn how to drive properly. And also another factor in his life that I think he's related to Aries is that he's an impulsive spender just like Aries, and he doesn't have a long-term plan in life. Nowadays he lives off like my grandparents, and some days he'll go fishing and other days he might go farm or help someone plow the field. And whenever he has money, the only sure thing that he knows what to do with his money is go get drunk. And that I feel like is his only plan in life. And he has no other plan of getting a sustainable job or raising his kids and stuff.
Yeah, alcohol is a real issue for an Aries guy, right?
Definitely.
Okay. Fahima, can you connect or type in something? Lakin, Pia, Spina. Okay, so Fahima, are you there? Or did you? Fahima has, trouble with connections. Let's see, Poppy, did you already pass on this one?
Yes, Professor.
Okay, and then Bondona? Do you have one? Okay. Because I'll just go back over the outline.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay, you don't have one? All right. So we have 10 minutes, so I'll go back and we'll start and just do a little summary here. The archetypes are imprecise, right? Every person is a combination and it changes with the different phases of life. And your goal is that basically you want to balance them out. But it is important, I think, because when you're in a critical moment, you really want to fall back to your archetype. And that's usually not the thing to do because it's an extreme, right? So for me, if I get in a situation where I really need to confront someone, my inclination would be to run away, right? And that would exactly be the not the thing to do, right? So, or yeah, I do go to a counselor and she's always telling me, you have to let yourself feel, you just think about emotions all the time. You just like, would you just have one? And she shows me this whole bunch of emoji type faces. Like, how do you feel right now? Point. So everybody can go to an extreme. It's just, you do need to know like what your archetype is and then what you have to sort of check yourself on. Okay, so Zeus, and the other thing that's interesting is Zeus and Apollo gets rewarded so much in our society, right? So just like Aphrodite, if you're physically beautiful and a woman, you get so much status, right? So you can think about which types. Okay, Zeus, the man, gets so much social respect. Athena, the woman, no, only amidst a highly educated group of people. So it really isn't the same, right? Even when we have similar archetypes, the way the society handles it is so different. And then we do have different archetypes, even accounting for cultural ways of perverting them. The other thing is both Zeus and Apollo are emotionally distant. They're not necessarily the greatest fathers or husbands. They could cheat, or they could trade them in for a younger model every 10 or 15 years, make another family because they can afford it. They fire people without a second thought. They're kind of encouraged to know how to manipulate people, how to exercise power over people. But that's kind of, that's what we admire. So, as a dad, he wants to control. So the ones we did today, the Hermes and the Ares, they don't want to control anything. They want to ditch or confront. Okay, if they're successful, they're often not home. So in high school, they take on those leadership positions. Again, that gets rewarded by the teachers a lot. if it's good, right? It can be good, can be go too far, can be bad. Always imagines how to organize a better, organization. Wants to play the role of the wife. Wants his wife to play this role, so he better pick the right person. His friendships with men, his all that. So his children are an extension of his ego, way to establish a dynasty. All right. Then you get Poseidon, the realm of instinct. It's just kind of nice to go back over these and just think about how different they are and how much we have to sort of self-correct. Or I also think we need to help each other, right? People who are you close to you or you're close to. You can start having kinds of conversations that can help people understand each other better and also self-correct and become more whole, right? More balanced, spot their weaknesses. Let's see. So a lot of these types have trouble maintaining a decent job. It is, working 50 years of your life for 50. My brother is a lawyer and he worked 60 hours a week for 40 years. I mean, he just was always at the office. And you just don't know who he is. He's not emotional. He was very close to his kids, though. Yeah, he really helped his kids out. So that's good. But the number of hours he spent at work, oh my gosh. Then there's the men who go into the arts, composing. Then there's the ones who go into therapy, like Hermes and Poseidon. All that stuff is really interesting to me. And Hades is such an introvert. Like, how does he deal with life? Then there's Apollo. Those are the ones you always read about, the CEOs. And they get kudos, They get so many kudos just for being themselves. And so that's why they can become narcissistic or proud. They can kind of lose it and be self-righteous over these other kinds of men and women. And it is important that, the thing that really bothers me in my country, and maybe I would hope in your country, is when there's such a huge gap in the salaries that people get, because people can't help it if they're a certain type. And so I think the Aries types, some of the other more emotional types become coaches. And that's a great service that they do. So I remember my kids were in sports, and these people that were electricians or working class jobs during the day were the ones that were the coaches. And I appreciated that so much because it meant so much to my kids. But I did not think it was fair that they got paid so much less because they're making such important contributions. So I really think greed is a terrible social disease, because everyone should be able to have a decent middle class life. And you shouldn't have those huge gaps between the rich and the poor. It just makes people think that they're more virtuous than they really are, or more vicious than they really are. They get deluded about their power or their virtue. They just lose track of reality. So the shrinking middle class is just a huge problem in my society. And I hope in some of your societies, it's a growing middle class that really causes people, sort of inspires people to behave and to set goals. So always when people have hope for a better world, a better life for themselves later on, or for their children or grandchildren, that often is a good motive. But, you know, when they can't have that, these people who are naturally emotional are just not going to be able to handle it, you know? They've got to be given some leeway in the social world and the economic world. So anyway, so next time we will do the last two, Dionysus and Hephaestus, and I will get the outlines out, not tonight. So it'd be about 15 or 16 hours from now, later in the day for the EUW students. So I loved your examples, and I hope all of you will bring more examples next time. Take care.
Thank you, Professor.
Of course. I will stay here if anybody has further questions.
Yes, Professor, I have.
Okay, Poppy,
Yeah.
what would you like to ask?
Okay, if someone have, so they can say, then I'll say later.
Okay, anybody else have a question? How's your baby, Rupia? Is it going okay? Hang in there. You probably don't get a lot of sleep. I understand that. I remember there was when my youngest one was probably 7 years old, which was 17 years from when the first one was born. I remember waking up and going, my gosh, I'm not tired. So it'll be a while, but that's okay. You'll still get there. Anybody else? You have a question, Rupia or Ruck9? They might not be on for some reason. Okay, Poppy, I don't think those other two. Okay.
Professor, I have a question about the paper. So today we have the submission. So uh, you did not give any time.
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
So it's
all
okay.
right.
Yeah, I got it. And then I want to say something about my paper. So can I share my confusion about the
Sure.
paper?
Um,
Yeah.
let's see. Go
In
ahead.
paper, yeah, Professor, in conclusion, should I write about the the story of related Athena's story, or in my opinion?
Actually, the conclusion should be by writing this paper and thinking about this material, the things
Yeah,
that
I am compared with what I understand about the Athena's from the Athena's, and also in my life stories. So I compare, and also I am write some word about the archetype of some woman name.
right.
So
Actually,
it
but
is
your conclusion should be something like, I didn't really realize that that's what I was like, or I didn't really realize how different women can be, right? Or I didn't really realize how different I am from my mother, my sister, my aunt. Just something like that in the conclusion. Like, what are some of the biggest insights you got just by going through the process of figuring out who you are? Does that make sense?
yeah. And also, Professor, I wrote my thesis, and after the thesis I wrote something about the Athena's childhood stories.
Right.
So it's okay. And then I wrote the body paragraph. In body paragraph, I just wrote it about who I am, and also I am compared with the Athena. So it is okay or not that time?
Right. The main thing is you have an introduction, right? So
Yeah.
after studying the goddesses, I decided I'm really very extremely Athena, or I'm really a balance of Athena and whatever you decided, right? And then,
Yeah.
then its first paragraph, the paper will explain how I got to that conclusion, right? And so you start out when you're young. What were those watershed things, or what did your parents say about you? And then you start with all the watershed experiences, the things that seem to reveal who you really were, like the critical moments or the decisions, things like that.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So only the Athena's story I have related about Athena's and with her father relationship, and this is the same kind of way in my life also. So I think it's a 50% kind of same Athena, and then another 50% is like Athena did like a politics in her life, but in my job I want to get a job in manager post or something like that. So this is the difference.
Well, actually, Athena is a manager. She doesn't have to be a political player. She can be a CEO. She can run an NGO. She's just the one that's running it, that's managing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Thank you, Professor.
of course, I look forward to reading it, and I'm so proud of you for all the way you're pulling yourself up. You could think a little bit about, to what extent were you forced into this role because you're the oldest kid? And to what extent do you think it's really natural for you?
And also, Professor, I have one like before women did not have that much power, but now women has like women everywhere is a woman power. So it's different from 20 years ago than now. So
Yeah, I mean,
that is
you could just say, I can imagine how frustrating it was for women in the past who really naturally had a lot to offer as leaders, and they never had a chance, right?
yeah, yeah.
And you might think of your mother, your grandmother, or some other woman from an older generation and realize that they could have really had a much more complete life, but they never had a chance.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, Professor. So, Professor, in my argument, what is my argument? So I am confused about that.
Well, you start out with your main thesis, right? I'm
Yeah.
Athena. I mean, if your thesis is I'm Athena, then that's the argument. You have to show, okay,
Okay.
childhood.
Okay.
It's an
Okay.
argument,
Okay.
right? Okay,
Okay. Thank you, Professor.
of course.
And take care. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
you too. You too.